You know, so much of life is about creating an effective balance. We need to do it in our daily lives or there are negative consequences, right? Well, the same thing is true for presidents, oddly enough, particularly during second terms that are fraught with political peril. And that peril can have long-lasting impacts on legacy and the future of the party in power. For President Trump, there are two traps to avoid at this critical time in his presidency now that the war in Iran has commenced. The first trap is to avoid attempting to oversell the war with Iran. Over the last week, we've heard that military action was necessary because Iran was going to strike first. The intelligence presented a unique opportunity to get rid of all the leadership at once, that negotiations were failing, that Iran has some measure of enough enriched uranium to make a bomb or 11 bombs because Israel was going to strike first, and of course that this would be an opportunity for the Iranian people to finally overthrow the Islamic terror regime. Is it about regime change? Is it about nukes? Is it about total surrender or a popular uprising? That's just been in the last week. Now, of course, one or all of those things could be true simultaneously, but it is critical for the president and his administration to really try to focus their rationale. This is going to become increasingly important as the military campaign continues and media scrutiny intensifies, along with the impact on global markets and the inevitable increase in American casualties. Remember, if you're explaining, you're losing. When it came to Iraq, George W. Bush's administration had shifting rationale for the invasion, and it cost them dearly. Today, Trump's team should avoid getting wrapped around the axle of the debate over how much enriched uranium the Iranians had or how close to having a nuclear bomb they were. It's an unprovable and therefore losing argument. The better option is to stay focused on the regime's long record as the largest state sponsor of terrorism, its killing of American forces, its human rights violations, its clear cooperation with China and Russia against U.S. and Western interests. That's it. That's all the rationale you really need. The proxy groups, the 47 years of carnage, the women being raped and executed for showing their hair, the American troops killed, its targeting of civilians in nations around the world, its efforts to destroy Israel. Americans are smart enough to appreciate that eliminating a force bent on that persistent level of destruction, that is also a chief ally of the dictators in China and Russia, is a worthy target for elimination by the West. The president has degraded the influence and power of China and Russia and Iran through his efforts to secure our hemisphere and topple Maduro in Venezuela. Now he has decapitated the murderous Islamic regime that is the third leg of the stool of the authoritarian bloc. That's a good foreign policy record that most rational Americans can appreciate. But here's the second trap to avoid. Mr. Trump and his team must continue to balance their foreign policy achievements with a bold domestic agenda. Contrary to what Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, and others would have you believe, Americans actually don't mind helping the world. Part of the American DNA is an appreciation of that old axiom of those whom much is given, much is required. It is the price that we pay for being the leader of the free world. When America doesn't lead on the world stage or leads behind, as Obama used to say, the world gets far more dangerous for everyone, including Americans. However, Americans are still keenly aware that their own personal economies and ability to achieve their own personal goals cannot be left to languish at the expense of military or foreign policy agendas, however important those may be. One of the reasons George W. Bush left office with such low approval ratings was because his second term was entirely consumed by the Iraq conflict and its aftermath. The daily drumbeat of bad news from the war and an ineffective strategy to counter both the narrative and the situation on the ground paralyzed the administration. Second Bush term had virtually no domestic policy agenda. For Mr. Trump, the answers here are pretty clear. Don't get consumed by the war in Iran, but rather continue to drive the domestic agenda to identify and prosecute fraud, to urge the passage of the ban on stock trading in Congress, and the SAVE Act, or some measure of it. He should be talking about the affordability agenda and his efforts to lower health care costs, aid local municipalities in tackling crime, and continue devolving power away from Washington. Those are all winning issues. Forging that balance will help ensure he wins on the world stage and here at home, avoiding the traps of his predecessors, who tipped the scales too far in the direction of foreign policy.